Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of Corona Geek here where we talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host, Charles McKeever, and today's show is a very special episode where we talk with Jordan Price, a UI designer out in San Francisco, about UI design and app development. Jordan's got a great portfolio at jordanprice.co if you want to go check that out. And without further ado, here's Jordan. Jordan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Charles. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. So let's just jump right into it.
Sure.
You describe yourself as a designer, an illustrator, and a graffiti artist. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. I'll try to give you an abbreviated version. So I feel like I've had a few lives in this sort of creative field. But yeah, I started off doing graffiti as a really young kid. I mean, right after junior high, I pretty much got obsessed with it, and spent a lot of time doing that. Eventually people started asking me to do graffiti on their clothes, doing custom sneakers and airbrush jeans and jackets, and that sort of took off in a pretty big way for me. When I was, this is when I was a lot younger, and because of that, I always had these different websites and had to deal with kind of marketing and at the time I was using eBay. Actually was a great way to market. And you could drive traffic to your sites and all this stuff. Eventually I kind of felt like I hit a ceiling with that. Became a footwear designer in New York City and totally hated it and bailed on that. Try to pursue my art again, more, fine art. I worked for Takashi Murakami, who's, a really famous artist from Japan. As an assistant, I did a lot of different stuff with that. And, had a kid and had to get kind of serious with stuff. And that's when, I started focusing more on design, and especially for startups.
Okay, yeah, because I'm looking at your I guess portfolio site where you've kind of got a different listing of all your different work and stuff like that. And you've got some awesome looking shoes and jackets and all that kind of stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big wide spectrum of art that you do. So it's interesting to hear that you went all the way from New York to San Francisco. You've been kind of all over the place, huh?
Yeah, well, I actually grew up in San Francisco, and then my father's from the Bronx, so I've had this long kind of history of going back and forth. So yeah, also when I was doing shoes and stuff, it was it was kind of the center of that fashion stuff, so it made more sense at the time.
Okay, so how did you go?
And now I'm doing tech, so
So
San Francisco sucked me back in.
Yeah, exactly. That's all about tech. I've been out there a couple of times this year, and it's like all over the place, right? Everybody that you talk to, even if coffee shops, you just overhear conversations and stuff.
Yeah, you can't avoid it.
So how did you get in the UI design then from doing the fashion scene?
Well, so I always had different websites, from the beginning, I knew I had to have an online presence. But it wasn't like I was like, hey, I'm going to be a designer, but I always sort of needed them by necessity. In the beginning, I remember I had somebody build me a site in Flash when Flash was, you had to have a Flash site with all these animations and stuff. And then I would go and need to tweak it, and so I'd go into the code and that kind of got me more into it. I took a few classes on like basic HTML stuff too. And so there was always kind of there, no matter what I've been doing. There's always been sort of this, necessity to do UI stuff. But a few years back, my older brother, who's kind of a serial entrepreneur, had asked me to, he wanted to launch a startup, and he said, hey, can you do the design, for the startup? And I said, sure. It just seemed like kind of another job to me, no different than any other kind of design job. And once I got into it, I just totally loved. I didn't just love the design, doing the design for, him and his startup, but it opened me up to this whole world of people that really didn't want to work for other people, like all these entrepreneurs. And that's what I really liked, just learning about all these people that are going out on their own and starting these businesses on the internet.
Yeah. The interesting thing about not wanting to work for someone else is that you actually work a lot harder than you would if you worked for someone else.
Oh, for sure. I was up all night last night working, and I'm like, yeah, totally. If I was doing that for somebody else, I would be really mad. But when it's for yourself, it's
and
totally
that's probably the defining part, is that that every bit of what you do goes into your business and into your future success, as opposed to being something that when you walk away, it's somebody else's.
Yeah, exactly.
So did you stick with websites? I mean, I know you do some app development, stuff like that as well. So how did
initially, these were all sort of web-based products, and then as I started getting, sort of more different clients and larger products, of course, people started having they needed a mobile version of their desktop site, and then of course they wanted native apps too, and so it's slowly been shifting further and further away from kind of exclusively desktop stuff to almost exclusively mobile.
Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of funny how that goes in cycles, because years ago it was everything was mobile, right? Everybody was pushing about mobile, but it was all this the postage stamps type screens, right? Just pushing.
Totally.
How could you push information to mobile devices? And now it seems like there's so much more that you can do with it, that now it's just a no-brainer that mobile is where it's at. So the terms UI, so user interface, and then like UX, which is user, I guess for those who don't know, is user experience. They seem to be interchangeable. Is there a difference in your opinion?
For sure. That's a good question. And I remember when I first started interviewing for different places, they'd be like, what's the difference between these two things? And I'm like, I don't know. But now that I have, a lot more experience doing this stuff, I do think there's a big difference. And, when I think of UI, I think of, just how something looks sort of visually. Does it look sleek? How are the buttons styled? What kind of typography did you pick out? And that's kind of it. And when I think, and that is a component of user experience, right? How something looks. But when I think of UX, I really think of more like, how does something work? Is it easy to use? Does it help users achieve what they want quickly without, cognitive load? Like making them think. Like, what is this thing? Why do I have to log in? Why is there a login screen? Why are all these pop-ups here? Like, all those things kind of tie into the experience.
My wife calls that unpacking. You hand someone a box of something, and they have to unpack it, right? They have to take it out and like organize it, and then they understand it. So
right.
If you don't have to unpack something, then it's just sort of like, oh yeah, click.
Yeah.
So how does UI influence the user experience? I mean, you said something about the idea that there's I like to think of it as the pretty, but then there's the design concept behind it. So is there a point where you can miss the mark on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point for me, UX more influences the UI, right? I really try to think, when I'm trying to, start with a new product, right at the beginning, I try to think of like the end goals, how are people going to use this? What are the things that we, really need to be prioritized? And also think about what should not be done, like all the things you need to say no to, all these extra features that would be nice, but really aren't essential. And try to really make a conscious effort to leave all that stuff out.
That's an interesting concept, yeah, because I guess myself, when I'm thinking about design, I'm thinking about putting things in, but you're saying that it can also be a matter of not putting things in, of saying no.
For sure. And, it's depending on, the sort of work environment you're in, or, the project scope or whatnot. There a lot of times there's compromise, right? Like maybe your boss wants all these extra features and you're like, but it's just clutter, and all these things sort of collectively add up, and it may seem like one little, just one little feature, but when you're bolting on like lots of little features, it can really kind of dilute the experience or whatever. So,
Okay.
I try to be really conscious of all that stuff when I'm designing things. And then, once all those things are worked out, then it's kind of like, okay, well, how does this thing look? Now let's do the UI.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any trends right now in that project owners should take advantage of? Is there anything that like advice that you could give somebody?
Any trends?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the big flat one has kind of come, and that's we're that's pretty much standard now, which I think is great. I think it makes it a lot easier in a lot of ways to design. I mean, you don't have to think about all these gradients and bevels and stuff. I think it does reduce, in a way, like the cognitive load of looking at stuff. It's just things are kind of distilled down more to their core. I don't know what kind of trends specifically. I think there's a lot of great prototyping tools out now that really can help people sort of get their ideas just, on a device, without actually having to build out.
Is there a particular tool that you use?
For sure. I mean, well, for prototyping for mobile stuff, especially for iOS, I love Flinto. I mean, it's like, talk about an easy tool to use, like just works. Yeah, Flinto's like I've used a ton of prototyping tools, especially for mobile stuff, and it's like, I couldn't say enough good stuff about it. It makes life really easy. And, and then all of a sudden you're like, within really, 10, 20 minutes, if, you have your wireframes done, you can have a mock-up that you can click right through and really, hand it off to somebody. What do you think? Would you use this thing? Like, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that. So now you design your own apps, right? And you're going to come out with a new one. What tell us about that?
Sure. So, so I've tried a number of over the years. I've had a number of attempts at entrepreneurial projects, and a lot of them haven't seen the light of day, or became too costly or whatnot. But yeah, this one is the first time that I've brought together my background as an artist and as as a designer, especially in the mobile space. So what I'm doing is building it's an app that basically lets you put stickers on photos and share them, to your social networks. But I really actually see kind of it's a lot of opportunity and exciting stuff in this space. I see a lot of people using stickers to decorate their photos on Instagram and make themselves sort of look cooler, or the girls want to look cute or make their photos look cute. And I think if I can really bring a nice product with quality content that people can put on their photos, it could be really exciting. Also, I've noticed too, a lot of brands and celebrities are starting to embrace this kind of thing. To like even Snoop Dogg has an app, where you can put Snoop Dogg stickers on your photos, and it kind of really creates a lot of engagement with users for these brands and celebrities.
Interesting. So, is this going to be more general audience kind of stuff? Do you have any plans to maybe brand it for particular individuals?
Definitely not. When I initially started the idea, I thought, I'll have a bunch of these standalone apps, like one for, make one for this artist and one for, this rapper or this celebrity or whatever. But what I decided to do was actually make a more general platform, there's a store in the app, right, where you can buy all these different stickers. And I wanted to make it on purpose or intentionally that you could get stickers for a number of different purposes, right? Like maybe you want some thugged out rapper stickers, or you're a girl and you want some more like cutie stuff it's a little more feminine or whatever.
Okay, so you kind of want to concentrate everything into that one app, and then have, I guess, maybe themes or something, like packs that you can buy. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So there'd be packs, and then of course, partnering with other artists too. It's not just me doing this. That'll be in this store. So I think to partner with other artists is like really key for this, because the more quality artists I have in here, like they can send it off to their audience. It's like, hey, download my thing in this app, right? And the more people I get in there, the more it kind of buoys everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really sharp idea, because what I hear is that you're reducing your amount of maintenance because you only have one app. You increase your value for marketing, right? Because you only have one app. And then by bringing all these other people in, you're leveraging everybody else's effort and their social networks and all that stuff like that. So it's not really like you're not the central point of failure in that process.
Exactly. Hopefully it all works out. I mean, it's not launched yet, but it's it's really close. So yeah.
Well,
I'm glad you see the vision.
Yeah, well, so many times as solopreneurs, solo entrepreneurs, we think that we have to like be superheroes, right? And it's all has to begin and end with us. And when in reality, the best business people understand that they really leverage the resources around them, right? And those resources can be people, or they can be materials or whatever, but it's not just their physical effort, because there's only so many hours in the day and we're only one person. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very cool. So now, speaking of that, you're not actually writing the code for this, correct? You've got a developer. Is that what I understand?
Yeah. So I've hired a developer. It took me that was an interesting process, I guess. Yeah, there was a little pain involved. I went through a small handful, to find somebody who worked right, that could do it for a price point that I, can afford, and who, had the skills to kind of execute it, on the quality level that I want.
Okay. And has it been hard to express your ideas? Has that been a challenge, or is it?
No, I mean, no, it's been great. I ended up hiring, my developers in China. There's definitely been some language hurdles, because his English is not the best, and I don't speak Chinese. But what I found works is that he types really well in English, and so we don't talk ever. We only type, and going back to the tool thing, every now and then I will hit a bump where I'm like, I'm trying to explain, how I want some functionality to work. And, I give them all these, lots of visuals, mock-ups, like all these kind of specs. But sometimes certain interactions maybe just are hard to communicate. And but if there's another app out there that has something similar, which there usually is, right? What I do is just take a little video of it, and I think what I use, Reflector, I think is the name of the app. Yeah. You can kind of record your screen. And yeah, I'll send him that, and that worked out great. One time I was trying to get him to do this certain interaction, and it just wasn't working. He had given me a few versions of it, and finally I was like, no, I want it to work like this, and send him a video, and he's like, oh, well, of course, and implemented it, and it worked out great.
So you've just kept it to a visual communication then. Anytime that you can bring in a picture or a video or something like that. Not okay. That's interesting. Very creative way of doing that. Okay. Well, what kind of? Let me ask. I'm really curious, because you said you're kind of following along in this trend of decorating photographs and stuff like that. So did you do any research on before you developed the app, or sort of like, do you think that's going to be kids that are going to use this, or how'd you figure
yes
it out?
Yes and no. I mean, I didn't do, it wasn't like I went around saying like, would you use this thing if I built it? Or, all these like lean startup techniques that people use, building landing pages and seeing how many signups they get, stuff like that. I'd seen other apps in this space that had pretty decent ranking, and I kind of felt like if I did this right, I could be just as good, or ideally better than what they're doing. Yeah, and then as far as figuring out who the market is, or who the users are, I actually have a small following on Instagram for my graffiti art and me as an artist. So I've been sort of like teasing out, dog fooding out like little, like teasers or whatever of what I've been working on. And then separately, I've been using Instagram to sort of troll potential users, like my competitors. I kind of figure out who's using their hashtags and then sort of start engaging with them. And I've sort of figured out who may potentially use it also because of that.
Okay, so you've done some market research by just looking at what's going on in that space and following the trend. Okay, well it sounds like an exciting app. I'm looking forward to seeing it coming out. So where can people follow your progress, and how can they contact you?
Sure. Well, they can check out my personal design site, jordanprice.co. I don't have a landing page up for my app, but it's very close to being done. I'm just making this video for it. But the site name is getsupercool.com. So hopefully by the time you see this, there'll be something there. If not, there will be soon. Yeah.
Getsupercool.com. I like that. That's it almost has that air of be super cool.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. That's good marketing in and of itself.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jordan. Thanks for being with us today. I really appreciate it, and good luck with your endeavors. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Jordan Price. Be sure to check out his website at jordanprice.co. He's got a great portfolio there, and he does freelance work. So if you need to engage a designer for your project, be sure to contact him. All right, we'll be back here next Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific time for more app development using Corona SDK. Thanks for watching Corona Geek, and until next time, happy coding.